we live in a busy world, a very fast-paced world. So it's more important than ever that we take the time to slow down. And in the world of communication, it means take the time to slow down to focus on our core message so that we can identify what's important and what's not.
Presentation Zen is an approach, not really a method. You know, a method is something you pull off the shelf and can follow step by step. So Presentation Zen is really about an approach to seeing, to identifying the problem in a way that will help you make much better presentations. So, you know, every presentation basically has three chunks, right? You have the preparation and you have the design, and then in the end you have to deliver it. And that's pretty much standard with every presentation. So I've taken three ideas out of the world of Zen, which are very, very simple ideas. The first one is restraint. Restraint especially applies to preparation. We want to identify what's important and what's not, and take what's not important for the moment and put that aside. And that takes a lot of willpower and to sort of restrain ourselves to let go of our babies and leave those out, at least for the moment. The second thing is simplicity. Well, but what does simplicity mean? Simplicity means many different things for many kinds of people, but basically it means the old, you know, less is more kind of thing. Visually, we want to include only what's necessary to get the point across, and the superfluous and the non-essential can be removed for the time being. And the third thing, of course, when we're talking about delivery, is naturalness. How can you make your delivery a much more natural and much more engaging type of thing? And of course, words like conversation come to mind. People like Steve Jobs, of course, who, even though he's speaking to, let's say, 5,000 people at a Macworld, he comes across in a very conversational manner. So that's sort of the goal with naturalness. Every week I get emails from people who have read Presentation Zen or who follow the blog. And recently I got an email from a technologist in India who said that really following this approach sort of changed his life in a way because he had this great content, but his presentation sort of followed the same old way, the sort of death by bullet point approach. And he took some of these ideas, made it much more visual, much more engaging. He himself became a much more engaging figure, and it changed his life because people were listening and they were getting his important message. So I think no matter what field you're in, if you look at Presentation Zen and follow the approach, keeping in mind, you know, the restraint, design, simplicity, all of that, I think you'll be prepared to make really, really incredibly great presentations. Now, what is a slidegement? Well, that's a slide and document. You put it together and you get a slidegement. And this happens when people try to kill two birds with one stone. The only problem is no birds are killed, which is great if, you know, you're a bird, but for everyone else, we get a document that sort of looks like this, where there's not enough information to be a useful document, and there's too much information, certainly too much text, to be a visual. And this is what happens when we don't exercise restraint. The opposite of restraint to me is actually laziness, right? Or we just don't take the time to bother with this idea of paring down and focusing on what's important. So one piece of advice then is to remember in the preparation stage that you can have a proper handout and that you should make a proper handout. And if you do that, in the handout, that's where more of the details can go. And it can be spelled out, it can be written out in a very logical fashion. And if you do that up front, then you won't feel compelled to cram your slides with lots of information that you don't actually need, but you sometimes put it in there, well, just in case, right? Someone says, well, what about this piece of data? Well, if it's in the handout, then you won't feel compelled to do that. So you might be saying, what's Zen got to do with it? I actually have lived in Japan for almost 20 years, except for times when I was in graduate school or when I worked for Apple. I've been living in around Tokyo or Osaka or even in the Japanese countryside. So Zen, which was born in India and then moved to China and grew up in China, but really took root and flourished in Japan. And it's at the heart of Japanese culture. And we don't verbalize Zen, of course, on the streets of Japan, but it is there. And for me, it's been a very sort of profound experience studying the Zen arts. And I've seen that you can apply the principles and the principles of Zen and Zen practice to many aspects of life, including work and including presentations. There are many concepts in Zen, but for me it's all about simplicity. And simplicity, which sort of has gotten a bad rap, certainly in the United States and in the Western world in general, simplicity is not about dumbing things down or leaving out what's important or sort of, trying to skirt an issue, for example. Simplicity is actually quite profound and very powerful, and it isn't even easy to do. But by the end of this video, and if you read the book, I think you'll have some concepts that will help you, leverage this idea of simplicity and bringing out what's important and leaving the non-important behind. So simplicity isn't necessarily simple to do, but for our audience, for our end users, it will be extremely powerful to do. The first step in the preparation process is to identify the core, to identify, the real essential thrust of the presentation. And one way to do that, really the first thing, is to first clear your mind so that you can identify what's important. And this brings up something that I learned from the world of Zen, which is called the beginner's mind, or sometimes it's called the child's mind. And what that means